Okay, so I'll introduce myself. I'm Jonathan Orlansky. I'm not sure if any of y'all have been at any of my sessions before. If so, it's great to see you again. If not, so nice to meet you. I'm the Maryland Regional Director for Applied ABC. I've been with the company for 7 years, and yeah, I'm very happy to get started. I've been a board certified behavior analyst since 2014, so that's 11 years now. And we're covering a great topic today, which is essentially using assessments to provide verbal instruction. I'm actually picking up where someone else left off. So let's go ahead and share screen on this PowerPoint and we'll get rolling. If anybody has any questions, just raise your hands during, and of course, we'll do some Q&A afterwards. We've got a lot to cover today, so this will be fun. Okay, so move this. Okay, so just to catch everybody up, sure. The beginning of this slideshow effectively just talked about discrete trial instruction, which is where you're giving a direct instruction or SD, descriptive stimulus, and getting a response, and verbal instruction, which is very similar but emphasizes elements of speech. And we were getting into, I'll just even go back a little bit. The part we had gotten into was the VB map, or Verbal Behavior Milestones Assessment and Placement Program, which is broken up into five different assessments. There's the milestones assessment, the barriers assessment, transition assessment, the skills task analysis, and the placement IP goals. We're going to focus mainly on the milestones assessment today, which is where we draw most of our goals from. It assesses these different elements, man, tact, listener, responding, echoic, well, all these. We'll get into them specifically. But all of them are different elements of speech with some social and play skills thrown in as well. Scores range from level 1, 0 to 18 months, level 2, 18 to 30, level 3, 30 to 48 months. So it's basically a norm-based assessment. These are the skills we expect from learners of this age. Um, Clients are generally assessed, children generally assessed 1 to 2 times per year. I feel like I'm lagging a little bit. I hope you guys can hear me okay. If there's any issue, please let me know. And they're assessed by the board certified behavior analyst and licensed behavior analyst. We're generally would say twice a year. So every 6 months, a learner is reassessed according to this assessment. Um, Assessment. Why is it important to follow a developmental assessment and curriculum? So as I said, it's sort of norm-based and it's a matter of sort of building blocks. So the assessment itself is progressive. So we're able to identify particular gaps, weaknesses, challenges that we know we can target. So it is the most sort of systematic way we can analyze and provide instruction. As it says here, logical sequence for skills. So th this is what a VB map looks like. This is level 1. This is what an initial assessment might look like. This learner has no mands. We'll get into this a lot more, but a mand is a request, something you're asking for. A tact is a label. It's the difference between I want coffee and that's a coffee machine. Listener skills. These first ones are basically just like looking at someone when they're speaking, being aware that speech is occurring and someone's being addressed. Higher up skills are like, here are 10 items, show me which one is an airplane. VPMTS, that's visual perceptual matching to sample. Um, that's what it sounds like. It's matching, but like again, the lower skills are more about like attending to a field and that sort of thing. Imitation, exactly what it sounds like. I do this, do this, and then having them repeat it back. And this was an easy one to follow because it basically starts with like, can do it for one thing, two things, three things, all the way up to 10 for that level 1. Echoics is verbal imitation. Say ah, having ah said back to you. Play skills. A lot of these first ones are just like interacting with their environment. If you put them in a new environment, how many things do they play with? That sort of thing. Social skills, that's, interact with other kids, and vocal, that's how many words someone typically has access to. And then when we reassess, this is what it looks like. Or actually, this isn't a reassessment. This is a different sort of learner. So this is someone with more language. So that first child, you saw they only made about two sounds. They didn't have many commands. They didn't have any tags. They didn't have any expressive language. This child can request several items and can name a bunch of items. They can respond to those sort of which of these things kinds of deals. So you can see uh, a very visual difference between these types of learners, which is great. It's just a different profile, and you're going to start in different places with them. So you saw that the first score was a 16.5. This one is a 65.5. Every one of those rectangles is half a point. The maximum amount you can get in a VB map is 170. So this is a reassessment of a learner, not the same learner, you can see, um, but great. Uh, but a similar learner in terms of the amount of language they're starting with. And then the second assessment is in green. So it's like, okay, we've been teaching this child for 6 months. These are the skills that they've acquired. So you're seeing like, some things have grown enormously. They didn't have any writing skills before. Their LRF, that's listener receptive feature function class. We'll get into that later. Skills have grown quite a lot, manding, tact, all that kind of thing. Some have not grown at all. This child's play and social skills have not developed in this time. Neither have their um, group skills. So it does vary. Um, we see growth in certain areas and not in others, and we'll talk about how we target particular areas. So, designing an intervention. After conducting the VB map, we want to look at where the child scores fall. As we said, not all scores are going to fall within the same level. Some kids are, especially focused and skilled with letters. Sometimes we'll see a kid with like, very low social skills or even imitation skills, but very high reading and writing up on level three. So there's, every kid is different. When choosing instructional objectives, we're going to look at all of his or her scores and try to balance them out. The most important cell or rectangle is the lowest one that's unchecked because it's all cumulative, it all builds on itself. So even if they've got some things past a certain point, we want to go focus on that area that hasn't been developed yet, because we know that's the most important building block. That's the element that we haven't seen yet. Why is it important for a child to have a communication system? Well, I think that is communication is how we interact with other people, how we make our wants and needs known, how we interact with other people. It's fundamental to independent, successful living. Choosing response form. Oh, so it can be vocal language. We always say verbal behavior because verbal can include sign language, it can include a selection-based system, picture-to-image communication system. PECS is one example. That's when you are picking up an icon and handing it to someone or making a little sheet. That's the sort of analog bit. Um, but it can also be tablets. You see a lot of tablet-based communication system if kids have communication devices, that kind of thing. We choose what's easiest for the learner. Obviously, the inclination is to go with uh, vocal language to start with. It's the most norm-based, requires the least accommodations. It's what we go with first. A lot of speech language pathology will say that you don't want to transition to an alternative form of expression until a child is at a certain age, maybe 7 or 8, just to make sure that vocal language isn't a possibility. But a lot of folks go with multiple things where you teach a sign and the word with it. That way you're giving them access right away to, I can communicate in this way, but you're also trying to teach them to speak. When choosing a response form, choose something that will be reinforced in the natural environment. That's the other thing. Not everyone speaks sign language. Kids don't always have access to their textbook or their device, although If you do have a child who has a textbook or device and that's how they communicate, make sure they have it with them at all times. I had a professor who called it walking around without one's tongue, and not having that kind of thing. So it's really important to get, if that is the communication system you're working, for them to have access to it. So, designing an intervention. This is for a learner whose skills fall in level one, that 0 to 18 month normed range. Um, one has uh, establishing 6 basic language and related skills. MANS, as we said, that's requesting. Echoics, repeating verbal sounds. Motor imitation, just what it sounds like. I do this, you do that. Listener discriminations, that's where you aren't speaking in response, but you're demonstrating understanding by indicating things or following directions. Tact, like we said, that's labeling, saying the names of things. Visual perceptual matching skills, exactly what it sounds like. You're making discernments and you're matching, showing that you understand conceptually things are the same. And if the learner has no demands, you teach them first. That's because the most fundamental form of communication is getting our needs met, asking for things. If you're not able to do that, it very often leads to behaviors, frustration, grabbing things, climbing on countertops, all these kinds of things. So that the language of asking for things comes first. Other focus areas for level one learners, play and socialization. We talked about play skills and social skills. We see that there. Obviously, that is an element of a learner that's fundamentally impacted by autism spectrum disorder, so we want to address that. Spontaneous vocalizations, always a difficult thing to teach, but you have it as a target and you reinforce it, and you know the distinction between them saying something on their own and saying something that you requested. Fine and gross motor skills. Again, we did do sort of imitation of actions, but there's a difference between gross motor skills, which is, stand up, sit down, arms up, and doing things that require digital manipulation, which is fine skills. Most skills are going to be taught using, this is something that was covered in the initial bit, discrete trial intervention, or DTT. That's that, sitting at the table, providing a reinforcer every time you request something, touch, car, and NET, which is natural environment teaching, which is more play-based, looks more like play, but everything is still precise in terms of how we're recording it. Designing an intervention for learners whose skills fall into level two, systematically expanding language and social skills, expanding size and scope of manned, tact, and listener repertoires. So again, it all builds on itself. We know they can request up to a certain point, but maybe they don't use a certain number of words, or they can only request a certain number of items. They can only name a certain number of things, etc. Developing multi-component verbal and nonverbal responses. Forming sentences, same kind of thing. They can say one word for something they want, but they can't use 2 words. We start teaching that. Beginning listener responding by feature, function, and class. I referred to this earlier. It's on the VB map. That's LRFFC. A feature is, touch the things with wheels, touch the things with a tail, etc. Function is based on what something does. Touch the things that fly, touch the things that you eat. Class would be touch the article of clothing, touch the piece of furniture, touch the food, touch the toy, those kinds of things. So it's learning about like larger categorizations and conceptualizations of things, which can be really useful in terms of one's development of language. Developing verbal and social interactions with peers. This goes into the importance of social engagement. Again, we really need to teach how to interact with kids. That doesn't come naturally to a lot of our learners, but also to generalization. If they can only do these things with a parent or only do these things with an instructor, it's not nearly as functional and useful. Developing group and classroom skills, being able to respond to group instructions. That way, if a kid is only doing things if they're told one-to-one, that's not as applicable. Again, it doesn't function in the same way as if they're able to respond to when everyone in a group they belong to is told to do something. And learning in less restrictive settings. So yeah, more sort of doing arts and crafts activities, doing things on the playground, etc. More natural environment instruction. Beware of the danger in moving too quickly for level two students rather than strengthening and expanding their skill repertoire. Again, it's that lowest unacquired skill that we're focused on. It's not like, oh, look, they're able to do this, and I want to teach to their strengths. If they're really exceptional at something, the odds of their regressing of that are very low. What you want to do is focus on those gaps, on those things that they don't have yet, and make sure that skills stay balanced, from domain to domain. And then developing intervention for learners on level three. Oh, and again, level two, typically developing 18 to 30 months old. So that's, a year and a half to 2.5 years old. And then level three is 30 to 48 months. That's 2.5 to 4. Expanding context of what a student talks about. We're talking about really building language, using more complex language, more, we haven't used this word yet, but intraverbal language. That's another one of the domains on the VB map. That's conversational. That's getting social feedback, being reinforced socially, listening to what someone says and responding appropriately, that kind of thing. Answering questions is a very early and essential intraverbal skill. Expanding sentence size, adjectives, prepositions, pronouns, adverbs, upping that complexity and specificity. More complex manding, manding with an adjective. I want the red one, the big one, etc. Teaching intraverbal behavior, I just talked about that. Socially appropriate behavior, so like knowing what's expected in particular environments. That's something we expect of somewhat older learners. Um, Increasing the frequency and complexity of peer and social interactions. Again, it goes from, you know, responding to a peer invitation to play to working collaboratively with peers to accomplish a certain outcome, that kind of thing. Learning group formats. We talked about how like it goes from sort of sitting with a group, following a routine to more involved, sort of making transitions within a group. Group projects would also, there's some overlap with these. And beginning academic skills, reading, writing, and math are all on that top level three. Where does one start with instruction? Always with pairing. If y'all aren't familiar with this term, pairing is where you initially connect with a learner. So that's where what we always say with pairing is it's where you go into an environment, you provide opportunities, but you don't place demands on a learner. It's where we first show a learner that your instructor is associated with reinforcement. Like, oh, this person's here. I get all my favorite stuff. I get, because again, a fundamental thing with ABA is associating preferred behaviors, which is all the skills we've been talking about, with preferred outcomes, you know, favorite snacks, favorite activities, praise, smiles, happiness, all these kinds of things. Like we want it to be like when you do this stuff, these important skills, great stuff happens. So pairing is where we first teach that, except without condition. It's an ongoing process. And the big thing is making the instructor themselves reinforcing. We want our kids smiling and happy as soon as they see their teacher. Pairing should be throughout the day. And that's the big thing is we always start the first session is always a pure pairing session. Sometimes it goes a little longer if we've got a learner who's a little more reluctant to engage, to sit, to talk with the teacher. We'll build pairing in, and it's usually sort of ongoing for the first week in terms of dedicated time and getting to know you, but all sort of bonding is pairing. So it's always sort of happening on some level. If problem behaviors occur during the pairing process, we do address the problem behaviors. We don't just let it go wild. But it also tells us a lot. If we do see these problem behaviors when we're not placing any demand, then it's not escape, right? If they're getting constant attention, it's not attention. That means like, okay, if we're seeing these behaviors, we know they're probably sensory, if it's access to preferred items and activities, we're generally just allowing access to items and activities during pairing sessions. So it tells us a lot that this is like a really sensory motivated kids, and that is instructive. Again, that's a whole, I'm sure y'all have been in webinars about behavior. That's its own thing, but it is important to sort of be aware of all these, everything interact in ABA. Students have to have the following skills. This is getting specifically into listener receptive and following directions, but come here, sit down, fold hands, maybe not as functional and essential. Walk with me, stop, and wait. These are all, I mean, fold hands is just like calm hands, like being, settled, which is important. So these are all sort of prerequisite instructions. If they're able to do these things, they're able to learn. Mandate. Oh, another thing earlier in the webinar was ABC um, uh, data, which is antecedent, what happens before a behavior. B, A, B is behavior, the thing itself. C, consequence, what happens as a result. So we often talk about that with problem behaviors. The antecedent is a loud noise, behavior screaming, a consequence covers their ears, or someone covers their ears, that kind of thing. But it applies just as much to skill acquisition. So an antecedent might be, and this really is more a motivating operation, hunger, because it's not a discrete event. Um, but let's take it on its face value here. It is a certain time of day. The kid is hungry. The behavior is asking for a cookie. The consequence is receiving the cookie. So it shows the power of using that language. Um, Teaching the man. Prior to teaching the man, because we have to teach kids how to ask for things, think about the following. What motivates the learner? What is powerful? What do they want? You teach them how to ask for something they want, they're going to do it because that's really powerful and important. When is that motivation strongest? That's the motivating operation I talked about. It's like if they really love cookies, pizza, cheese, chips, whatever, that is going to be at its peak power when it's a time of the day where they're hungry. Make a list of possible reinforcers, make a list, but also do a reinforcer assessment, and select the first few words to teach. Teaching first words. When choosing the first words, teach, keep the following in mind, and choose items that, and remember, this is the words themselves are the reinforcers. That's what they're asking for, right? So the learner has a high motivating operation for it. It's something they really like and it's something they're motivated for by. The learner will not become satiated with it quickly. So it's not something they only want once or twice. That could apply to particular toys of not especially high interest. It's also like if we're using food as a reinforcer, which is very commonly the case with MANs, a kid wants food, they want drink. Especially if it's, and again, we are never withholding needed food. Like at mealtime, we're not saying you have to ask for the sandwich to have the sandwich. You let a kid eat. But if it's a snack, if it's something that's less essential but highly preferred, I would, talk about M&Ms. I wouldn't say just give the kid. You certainly don't give them a bag of M&Ms every time they ask for M&Ms. You don't. I wouldn't even say give them whole M&Ms. I would break it up into quarters. That way, they're not getting. They've not had all they want quickly. You get to do a lot of trials. You get to do a lot of practice. Um, you can deliver quickly and easily. Hand it right to them. Um, uh, can be consumed or dissipate. Again, food's really easy for this kind of thing. Um, are easy to remove when necessary, and that's true of all instruction. Like you need to have complete control over the reinforcer. They can't just grab it. Do not rhyme. That's a pretty valuable one, right? Like it needs to be a really discrete word. I'm trying to think of what uh, a good example would be. Y'all know what rhyming is. You just avoid rhymes because those things get very easily mixed up in their heads, and you're choosing just like these are their first words, right? So there's no reason to have any sort of bleed or overlap or complication. And things that'll be used in the natural environment. You want to teach them to request things that they will request anywhere, anytime. Words that should be avoided. And again, this isn't saying you don't teach these words at all. This is really just selection of first words. Words that are related to a variety of motivators. So you don't just teach them more, please, mine, yes, and help as the words themselves, because there's so many things those could mean in different contexts. And you want to be able to say like, when you say this thing, you get this thing. It's precise. Words that are related to motivators from general categories. Eat, play, toys. Again, those applications are too broad. They can mean too many things. Words that remove an aversive, break, finished, all done. No, really important to learn, but that's associated with negative reinforcement. For the first words, we want it to be positive reinforcement. Um, Pretzel, bread, uh, uh, you know, car. Um, Words that are related to items that are hard to deliver. They may love swimming, but if we're sitting in the classroom and they ask for swimming, I'm glad you want to do that, buddy. Like, that's probably not available at all. If it is available, it's only available at a specific time of the day. Like, and the big thing is, when we're teaching our first mans, when they ask for it, they get it. Um, Words that are related to items that are hard to remove. Uh, Outside, gum. So gum's really interesting because they keep it for a long time. So it's like I gave them that quarter of an M&M, they ate it, now it's gone. If they ask for outside, I can give them outside, but then every single time we're going to transition back in. It's tough. It's something you want to be able to give them, and then it's gone, and then they want it again. And words that are related to politeness. Please and thank you. We don't start with please and thank you because those are, while very nice and appreciated in society, basically superfluous. Like that's on top. That's not a first word. Examples of first words to teach: specific food items, chip, apple, cookie, cracker, banana. They say those things, they get those things in a limited amount. Specific drinks, juice, milk, water. Toys, ball, car, bubbles, train, Play-Doh, puzzle, drum. Those are, again, I give it to them, I take it back, they ask for it again, I give it to them. And physical actions, being picked up. That's a very popular one. Tickle, very popular one. Hug, swing, push. That's what's so good about swing. It's one push. Very satisfying. Hold again, swing, or push, same thing. Teaching the man. Begin in the natural environment where motivation is strong. Let them ask for the things they want when they want them. Have a variety of highly preferred items available: edibles, toys, games, sensory items, etc. Keep in mind the list of first words you created. So mainly like, I know I'm teaching these things and they're all here. That way, any one of these things they ask for, there it is. I mean, and that's what's so great about physical reinforcement. Every time they ask for a hug, you can give them a hug. And restrict access. So again, they can't just grab the stuff. They've got to wait until it's offered or given. Teaching the man. Watch the child and see what he or she is interested in. Keep in mind that MOs are constantly changing the thing they want. That satiation is something you can do to diminish, but you can't avoid. Satiation is, for those that don't know, it's when they've had enough of something. So then they're no longer going to request it, they're no longer going to want it, kind of thing. That does always come. Um, Prompt man to reduce the effort required for reinforcement. Do not say, "What do you want?" I mean, that can be an initial SD. But this is sort of talking about how, like, we're right at the beginning of teaching. You want it to be errorless. And errorless learning is where, like, what do you want? A chip. And then they say a chip, and then they get a chip. There's no way to get it wrong. It's unambiguous. You're showing that you're establishing the link between these things. Make sure to fade prompts quickly. So like, yeah, once that link is established, then we're pulling it back. I've got a video on this later, but you basically say, you start with say chip, chip, and then you can go to a partial verbal, ch, and then they know chip, and then it's like, what do you want? And then there's a visual indicator. You pull that back. It's sort of like the prompts are there to really provide the structure, and then you pull those back so they know how to do it on their own. And then don't just give them stuff to give them stuff. You're trying to teach the behavior and its association with it. That doesn't count prompts. They're doing the thing if you're doing prompts. But if you just give them, if what they love is grapes and you just give them a bowl of grapes, the motivation to say grapes is diminished. Um, so the teaching procedure: wait for the learner to show interest or need for something, withhold that object, and prompt by saying, signing, physically prompting, or gesturing to the word or item they want. Wait for them to want the grapes. Don't give them the grapes because they pointed or because they grabbed for it. Uh, wait for them to say it, but also help them to say it. Wait for the student to respond, imitating what you did, accepting physical prompt. And that's the thing. If the kid can't form the words, that doesn't mean that you don't give it to them. That's why we talked about vocal language, but also like we've got a picture of grapes. If you need to pick up their hand and put it on the picture of grapes, that's truly errorless. There's no way to get it wrong. You've guided them all the way there and they've done it. Then you reinforce it. And reinforce the specific item. If the learner does not echo and we have a reasonable expectation um, for them to be able to say it, then you know, withhold the item and repeat the name of the item up to 2 additional times. The student echoes, immediately deliver the reinforcer. Once they say it, they get it. Teaching procedure. Learner reaches for the cookie. Teacher withholds the cookie and says, signs, or selects cookie. Learner says cookie. They get the cookie. There you go. Fading the prompt. Learner reaches for the cookie. Teacher withholds cookie and pauses for 3 seconds. Learner, cookie. Teacher delivers cookie. Again, I've got a video for this. Yeah, here, let me pull that up so that you see what I mean. I'm going to stop share real quick. So let me find my video. There we go. You're basically going to see what I just described. Go.
For their wants and needs in their environment. Cookie. 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 Good, you got a whole one because you said cookie all by yourself. Nice asking for cookie. High five. Good job, buddy. The instructor begins by delivering the reinforcer with model for pairing trials. The instructor piques the child's interest by holding the cookie where the child can see it, but it's just out of reach. The key to success is speaker motivation. The instructor uses a full prompt with a 0-second time delay. Cookie. By avoiding other words, the child is more likely to only repeat the word cookie. Beginning with a full prompt prevents the child from making an error and becoming frustrated. The instructor provides immediate positive reinforcement following the request. The instructor immediately repeats the exercise, providing less assistance or a faded prompt. Notice that the instructor does not say, "What do you want?" Teaching a child to only respond to phrases such as "what do you want" could lower spontaneous requesting in the future, as a child could become dependent on waiting for someone to ask them what they want before making a request. Each time the child was able to request the cookie with less prompting than they were in the previous time. Good, you got a whole one because you said cookie. When delivering reinforcement during man training, avoid unnecessary words like "good job." Using just the name of the reinforcer itself will help the child to pair the word cookie with the actual cookie when making later request. Select the response form that the child will use. Remember, requests can come in many different forms. It can include pointing, signing for an item, or a picture exchange. Select the response form the child will be most successful with and therefore more likely to use. Teach when motivation is strong. Remember, practice makes perfect. Build motivation by manipulating the environment so the child will be more likely to mand, such as giving a piece of a cookie instead of the whole thing. Fade your prompts so that mands are spontaneous. It's important that the child also learns to ask for things that are out of sight. This can be taught by moving items from just out of reach to being placed on a shelf to being placed behind an item where only a part of the preferred item is shown and eventually faded to completely out of sight. It's important to avoid meeting the child's needs before they have to ask for items and activities, such as asking, "What do you want?"
This is all really good. It's saying the same stuff. So I just want to make sure y'all saw it. Okay, let's get back to the presentation. All right. Tacting, naming an object, event, action, property, etc. that you see. Antecedent, seeing cookie. Behavior, saying cookie. Consequence, good job. But again, that this is not, I want a cookie. This is just, that's cookie. Um, okay. So the antecedent generally nonverbal stimulus, although the stimulus can be what is this, and usually it will instruct them. Behavior, you say it. That's going to Josh. Um, Teaching the tact. So again, this is saying the nonverbal stimulus is student sees the bus. Again, we'll often say, "What is that?" They say bus. You say good job, but not just good job. And we always like to do behavior specific risk. Yes, that is a bus. You said it was a bus, etc. Uh, and generally, we'll have some kind of reinforcer provided as well, like the cookie or whatever it is they like. The just because they're not manning doesn't mean they don't get a physical reinforcer. Teaching the tag. Teacher holds up a picture of a bus and said, "Was it? What is it?" Then he immediately says or signs bus. Student says or signs bus. That's errorless. Teacher represent the picture of the bus and say, "What is it?" Give them a little chance to respond. Student says or signs bus. Run 2 to 3 distractors trials. So that distractor trials, a classic example is if we're doing like receptive, a standard trial might be there's a picture of a bus, there's a picture of a dog, there's a picture of a cat saying touch the bus. A distractor trial would be just a picture of a bus and a blank card and then saying touch the bus. So it's like very easy. Another example of a distractor, because they're sort of talking about behavioral momentum here, where like you ask them to do things you already know they know how to do. And generally, like once you give a kid a few successes in a row, they're more likely to do the more difficult skill successfully when asked. So then hold up a picture of bus and say, "What is it?" They say bus, and then you got it. Reinforcement. Uh, so Uh, Now we're on to listen receptive, which I just described when I was talking about distractors, but that's fine. Um, Follow instruction or motor responses because someone asked you to. Uh, Teacher said, there's 3 pictures. There's a bus, a cat, a dog. Give me bus. They hand you bus. That's bus. Here's reinforcer. Here's the, you know, eighth of a cookie, whatever it is. Um, so yeah, same deal. This shows how to move from errorless, show me bus, and then I touch it. And that's if a child responds to gestural prompts as a controlling prompt. The main thing when you're doing something errorless at the very beginning is you want to make sure they're successful. If I indicate something and that doesn't mean they're going to do it, that wasn't a successful prompt. That's not errorless. It may be, like we said earlier, taking their hand and putting it on bus. Whatever it is that works for this particular learner. Student touches bus, rearrange. Oh, and between every trial, you always want to shuffle it around. You do that 3 card Monty. And then you say, "Show me bus." And then you wait 2 or 3 seconds to learn to respond, or you fade some dimension of the prompt. Instead of taking their hand all the way there, you move their hand in the right direction, or I've gone back to a gesture or model, whatever it is. You pull it back in some way. Then rearrange again, make sure they're successful, show me bus, touches the bus, all on their own. Good job, reinforcement. Motor imitation. So there's object imitation, gross motor imitation, fine motor imitation, oral motor imitation. These are all kinds of things, uh, different kinds of imitation. So do this, taps the table, my hands the table. Student taps the table, success. Same kind of thing. Do this, tap the table, physical prompt, full physical. You take their hand, you tap the table. Great job. Partial reinforcement. And you also, I meant to note this in the video. Also, how it wants the kid asked for a cookie totally on his own. He got a whole cookie instead of a little piece. That's called differential reinforcement. So when we're talking about these prompting trials, they'll receive some level of reinforcement, a high five, a tickle, some portion of what you know is their preferred reinforcer. But it's not until we get to 6 that they get the full reinforcements. They can see the difference between doing something independently and doing something successfully with a prompt. I won't take you through the whole thing. It's the same thing. Okay, interverbals. Like we said, interverbals is responding to language with language. So answering WH questions, completing fill-in responses like ready, set, and learner will say go, or all the way up to having a conversation. Um, Teacher says, what do you eat? Learner says cookie. Teacher says, good job. That's a success A, B, C. Um, or the wheels on the, learner says bus. Good job, provide the reinforcer. And then this is one with a visual prompt as the example. The wheels on the hold up picture of the bus, and we only do this with a learner. And generally, this is the case. Interverbals don't come into play until tier two of the VB map. So generally, our learners have covered a lot of ground tacting already. So we should be able to hold up a picture of a bus and they say bus. But just in case, maybe they need a verbal prompt. Wheels on the bus, say bus, bus. And then again, we fade the prompt until we're able to do it fully independently and then provide the reinforcement. Putting it all together. Well, I don't have this video. There's no link to it. But that's okay. We've got ground to cover. Optimal learning takes place when you pair the teaching environment with reinforcement. So again, pairing is all about I'm at school, yay, my teacher's here, hooray. Mix and vary instructional demands. So when we're teaching manding, we have all those different mands available. Reduce learner errors, start with errorless teaching, show them what success looks like, make them feel successful, etc. Uh, Intersperse easy and difficult demands. Like we said, the more a kid feels successful, the more likely they are to be successful. Fade in the number of demands. So we start. With this, we've been doing continuous reinforcement. But generally speaking, you're going to do a thing where every time they ask for something, they get it. But then it fades back to, okay, you labeled three things. Now you get the reinforcer. You labeled five things. Now you get the reinforcer. So you fade back that level of reinforcement from every time to every set number of times. Often you'll use a token economy. Um, and that's, that's how it'll work. A token economy being like they earn a star every time they do something correctly. 3 stars can be cashed in for a reinforcer, that kind of thing. Fade in the effort of tasks, make it increasingly more difficult as prompts are pulled back. Always immediately deliver reinforcement as established. So and the reinforcement could be a star, but always right then, so that it's unmistakable that when they did the thing correctly, the reinforcer follows immediately on the heels. Um, Pace instruction properly. Once you're rolling, it should be fairly quick. Again, that's all about the lack of ambiguity between this is what I'm asking, this is what you did, this is what you get. And then on to the next. The thing gets eaten, you're back into it. Or however, if it's a toy, we've established it's going to be 10 seconds of reinforcement, 15 seconds of reinforcement, that kind of thing. A lot of times with new instructors, I'll see them run a beautiful sequence and then they give them something and then it's like, wait, they even do them for 2 minutes? That's like we're really getting out of things at this point. It's tough to transition back. Whereas generally like a quick hit, this is fun. I bounced the ball a few times and then I'm back in it, knowing that I'm going to get it again quickly, but and for a limited amount of time. That's generally how things work best. Teach to fluency. Being able to do it for a number of stimuli. Fluency training is all about speed. So being able to do something a certain number of times within a certain whatever uh, is sets them up best for generalization and demonstration of skills. And short intertrial intervals. That's what we're just talking about. Like not a lot of time between when you're putting these things out there. Program for generalization. Generalization we talked about a little bit earlier, but that's sorry for speaking fast. I hope it's easy to follow. I just want to make sure we get through everything. Generalization is you're not just doing it with me, you're not just doing it in the classroom, you're doing it with other people, other places. So program using multiple stimuli, uh, different kinds of cars, different colors of things, different, like as much variety as you possibly can so that conceptually they're getting as broad an understanding and thorough an understanding as possible, using multiple instructors. When I was training, we would rotate out kids pretty frequently, just, I mean, not every day or anything, but every 3 months or so, just so it's like, okay, I want to make sure that you learned this with Jonathan and you learned it with Olivia, whoever the case may be. Train in multiple environments, can be around the classroom, at home and in the classroom, at the playground, and all these kinds of things. Just things can become very siloed if you let them, so you need to be conscientious of that. Use different carrier phrases, tones of voice, pitch, volume, etc. Um, Again, it's little things, but they matter. A skill is not mastered unless it is demonstrated in the natural environment and for an extended period of time. All right, that is it.